In the opening days of the First World War, the German Light Cruiser Emden began a commerce-raiding rampage across the Indian Ocean. Over the course of 3 months, it single-handedly terrorised shipping across the region, smashed harbours to bits, and left the Royal Navy scrambling to catch up. Emden began the First World War attached to Vice Admiral Maximilian von Spey's East Asian Squadron, based at Tsingtao in China. Not long after war was declared, von Spey divided his force. The majority of his ships, including the cruisers Gneisenau and Scharnhorst, would head east for South American waters, but on the urging of Emden's captain, Lieutenant Commander Karl von Müller, he agreed to detach Emden to raid Entente shipping in the Indian Ocean to divide and confuse the British response to von Spey. Emden arrived in the Bay of Bengal in early September and soon got to work. On September 8th, it captured the Greek vessel Pontoporos and von Müller took it into his service, paying the ship's crew to act as a supply vessel for Emden. Over the next couple of weeks, Emden cruised across the Indian Ocean and wreaked havoc, intercepting 12 merchant ships. Emden evaded detection thanks to the use of a fake fourth funnel constructed out of canvas, which gave the ship an appearance similar to a British Yarmouth-class cruiser. Its presence was only revealed when a neutral Italian vessel that passed close by realised Emden's identity and transmitted a report, alerting the British forces in the region under Vice Admiral Martin Jerram. With his location revealed, von Müller took Emden west, soon approaching the coast of India and audaciously bombarding the port of Madras after dark on September 22nd. On the back of this success, Emden steamed back east into its previous rich hunting ground in the Bay of Bengal, but shipping had now been suspended out of fear of the German raider. Frustrated and conscious that the Royal Navy would be doing all it could to locate and sink his ship, von Müller decided to try somewhere new, and steamed southwest towards Ceylon. Here it struck gold again, with the sinking of the SS King Lud on September 28th beginning a week of success, with 8 ships intercepted. Emden then turned south, heading for the isolated Chagos Islands in search of a location to carry out some maintenance. Remarkably, word of the outbreak of war had not yet reached the tiny British outpost at Diego Garcia, so the authorities there did not take any hostile action or report Emden's presence while it remained there for 2 weeks. The cruiser departed Diego Garcia on October 10th and cruised north, making 7 more interceptions near the Maldives, before turning east and setting its sights on repeating the Madras operation on an even more significant target. In the early hours of October 28th, Emden was able to creep undetected into the port of Penang, just off the coast of Malaya. At a little after 5 AM, the Russian cruiser Zemchug came into view, laying at anchor with its crew in such a state of relaxation that the captain wasn't even on board. At 5:18, the Russian ship was given a rude awakening as Emden fired its starboard torpedo tube from close range, striking Zemchug amidships and being followed up by fire from Emden's guns. Some of the Russian crew scrambled to try and man their own weapons, but found only 12 shells to hand, with the rest secured in magazines below deck. Fire from Emden raked the deck and struck the forecastle before a second torpedo impacted and finished the ship off. Of a crew of 250, Zemchug sunk with the loss of 88 men. After this success, Emden found no lack of other targets in the harbour, but its crew could see destroyers and torpedo boats being rapidly prepared to confront the cruiser. Von Müller decided to cash out his winnings and depart while he still could, mindful of the approach of daylight. On its way out, Emden ran into the French destroyer Mousquet. A short and sharp exchange of gunfire followed, in which the much stronger armed Emden devastated its adversary. The French captain, Lieutenant Tarouin, had both of his legs blown off but ordered his crew to physically lash him to the bridge so that he could continue to issue commands amid a hellish scene. When the dust settled, Mousquet had been sunk with the loss of 46 crew. Von Müller ordered boats to be lowered and picked up 36 survivors before completing his escape westwards. The raid on Penang had been a great success, but the Germans didn't have it all their own way. The supply ship Pontoporos had been captured, and Emden was briefly shadowed by the French destroyer Fronde and its position reported. With the enemy closing in, von Müller decided to take his ship south, but not before intercepting the steamer SS Newburn on October 30th and transferring the French prisoners to it, with directions to drop them in the neutral Dutch East Indies, where the wounded among them could receive treatment. Emden cruised down the west coast of Sumatra over the next week, eventually heading for the British-controlled Cocos Islands in the southern Indian Ocean for a rendezvous with the supply ship Burresque. The Royal Navy continued to track it and transmitted a message to the Cocos to warn of the ship's impending approach. Early on November 9th, Emden appeared at the Cocos, close to the British wireless station on Direction Island. A landing party was swiftly dispatched to take control, but before they could arrive, the station's superintendent, Darcy Farron, managed to send a distress signal. By lucky coincidence, a British convoy was not far away, and within 4 hours the cruiser HMAS Sydney was detached and arrived from the east. The Germans initially mistook the smoke on the horizon as the Burresque, but as the silhouette resolved, it soon became clear that this was in fact an enemy cruiser. Von Müller quickly ordered Emden to get underway at 9:30, but as they had been laying stationary, it would take over an hour to get the engines up to full speed, and in the meantime Emden would have to fight it out. At 9:40 am, Emden opened fire on the approaching Sydney, and the two ships began to steam north, trading blows. Emden's third salvo was accurate and scored hits, destroying Sydney's fire control stations and starting a small fire. The Australians hit back, with larger 6-inch shells soon crashing into the sea around Emden. If the German crew could get their ship to full speed, there was a chance they could escape, but before they could, several major hits were scored, wrecking the radio room and the cruiser's forward guns. Shell after shell smashed into von Müller's ship as Sydney closed the range. Emden's luck had finally run out. One of its funnels was shot away as fire began to engulf parts of the ship. Realising the game was up, at 10 am von Müller swung his blazing ship hard to starboard to try and reduce the range and launch torpedoes. But with its speed dropping and rudder damaged, it was impossible to get any accuracy on the torpedoes, and Sydney was able to easily avoid them. With his ship's power as a fighting unit now depleted, von Müller ordered his helmsman to steer for North Keeling Island, not too far away to the northwest, thinking now about how he could preserve the lives of as many of his crew as possible. At 11:15, Emden ploughed into a reef just off the coast of the island and came to a swift halt, as crew desperately tried to fight fires and treat wounded. Sydney continued to fire on Emden until the ship's colours were pulled down, marking the end of it as a fighting ship of the Imperial German Navy. 137 of her crew were lost, with the survivors picked up the following day by the British. It was the end of a valiant 3-month campaign during which Emden had punched far above its tonnage and become a determined nuisance to Britain's seaborne trade in this part of the world. Von Müller won plaudits for his skill in evading the Royal Navy for so long and for his humane treatment of prisoners. He and his crew had fought to the end, thousands of miles from home, just as Vice Admiral von Spee would himself do at the Falkland Islands a little over a month later. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.